So going back, he says here, whilst I may escape, I will preserve myself. So I'll at the very least try to keep alive, stay alive. And he says, and am bethought to take the basest and most poorest shape that ever penury and contempt of man brought near to be. So it's up in the air why he's doing it, why he will take on this affect of poor Tom, to go from this figure of nobility, the eventual Earl of Gloucester himself, to poor Tom, the poorest wretch of the land, to like a beast. And it seems as though, I think one could argue that he's doing it in order to escape, but it's not clear in his language if that's the case. So whiles, perhaps the understanding of the word whiles I may escape, I will preserve myself. And so perhaps one could render that as, in order to escape, I will preserve myself, and the way to do it is to take the basest shape. But it's not necessarily that. It could be, in the meantime, I might be able to escape. And if so, I'll be able to preserve myself. And then the next thought, the concluding or the consecutive thought from that is, brought about by desire, I bethought to take the basest shape. And so it's almost as if he too, in the way in which Lear, the way in which the tragic hero has suffered from hubris, well, Edgar takes on that same overweening aspect, but it's not pride. It's the loss of self. It's an overweening desire to lose oneself, to debase oneself. And so he becomes poor Tom. So during the storm, I'm not convinced that Edgar is Edgar during that time, but that he really is poor Tom. Um, it's not until after he witnesses King Lear that that Edgar returns, that Edgar is returned to himself. Prior to that, seemingly, he's in the hovel not because he's waiting to see anyone, but because he's poor Tom. And that's it, and he might be that way for the rest of his life. And so when we get to the end of Act 3, where Edgar sees the misery of King Lear, everyone leaves the hovel for a second, all but Edgar, and this is Act 3, Scene 6, line 101 or so. And Edgar stays behind and he says, when we see our betters, when we our betters see bearing our woes, we scarcely think our miseries our foes. So only out of an admiration of someone else, which he admires King Lear, seeing Lear suffer, for him makes his suffering seem nothing. We scarcely think our miseries our foes. Who alone suffers most in the mind. So he's centralizing the problem of suffering, which is that it's in the mind. Who suffers alone? Those that suffer alone. The primary aspect of suffering then is in the mind. And so leaving free things and happy shows behind. But then the mind much sufferance doth overskip, when grief hath mates, and bearing fellowship. And so how light and portable my pain seems now. There's a beautiful line there. How light and portable my pain seems now. I can carry it. When that which makes me bend makes the king bow. And so by the end of it, we realize that the suffering of King Lear here brings about an effect that redeems. It changes Edgar. And it's efficacious, we'd have to say. And so that there's something in the process of this hubris, how necessary all of it was in order to effect the good, right? To effect redemption. And so we can even see it. Lear doesn't have to intend it at all. He doesn't. He's mad. He can't intend it. But it doesn't matter. What he undergoes brings about redemption. And so Edgar comes back to, and of course he's the figure by the end that we're willing to hand the whole kingdom over to. We're willing to hand everything over to Edgar by the end because of his show of righteousness and justice and courage. And it's all borne about by that overweening sense. He's overwhelmed by the desire to become nothing, in the same way that Lear was overwhelmed in the desire to become everything. And so you see these two monumental forces playing themselves out in the lives of of these actors, or of these players, of these people, to the point where it makes sense when Gloucester says that that we are but playthings to gods, right? Like flies to wanton boys. And so anyway, so Edgar is a vital part of this, especially as a witness to the things that are going on, and a witness to the tragedy, but a witness to the efficacy of tragedies. Which, if you remember, that's one of the vital parts of it, that there's a catharsis, right? I think in the Christianized world, we say that catharsis must bring about an effect that redeems. It must have an efficacy. It must bear the resemblance of a sacrament, a ritualized way for us to understand our place in the world. And so Edgar is a vital part of that. And Lear is too. We can't dismiss him anymore. Even in his madness, we can't dismiss him, because it has an effect, and Edgar is witness to that. So anyway, that was long enough. And all right, take care. Ciao, ciao.